the film itself is absolutely beautifully shot. Like any single frame, you could take it and hang it on the wall in a gallery. I know that you guys recreated 1920s Ybor in Georgia. What was that like for you guys shooting and directing?
Well, Georgia has a tax rebate.
Yeah,
so
sure.
that's why we were in Georgia, and it was about a couple hundred miles north of where it really took place.
Right.
But actually, southern coastal Georgia is a lot more wild than Florida. Is just all strip malls, and you can't go anywhere where you get that sense of, unless you go to the Everglades or something, of raw natural beauty. And I wanted a sense of an uncultivated, unexplored place, something wild where you saw wild animals. And so we found this place, and then we built Ybor City on this street in this small town, and I think we got away with it.
Marker.
And action!
My name is Matthew Colvin. I worked on Live by Night for 4 days, and I was a casting PA. I first heard about the production back in February of 2015. I was sitting on my bed, and I got a notification on my phone that somebody had tagged me in something. A family friend had actually tagged me in this thing where it was a picture over by where the courthouse is, like kind of that parking area and everything. And it was a picture of this group of like 4 or 5 people. And there's one guy who was taller than the rest, and he had a blue jacket on. And apparently, it was Ben Affleck. And I'm like, my first thought is, what the hell is Ben Affleck doing in Brunswick, Georgia? So I looked at the headline of the post or whatever, and it said he was scouting locations for his new movie. I thought about it for about 5 or 6 minutes, and I flew downtown as fast as I could. I got there, and I missed him by 15 minutes. Back when I was a junior in high school, I remember my parents were out of town for something or whatever they were doing, and I treated myself to a double feature. The first one of those was The Town. It was the first movie I'd ever seen that Ben Affleck had directed, and it just swept me off my feet. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was action, but it had a drama to it. It had strong characters. It was nothing like I expected. I went in completely cold, and it's still one of my favorite movies to this day. Needless to say, the next step was, how do I get on this? And I talked to my career development person from Full Sail, who was kind enough to give me some information, told me who the production company was, yada, yada, yada. And so I got the phone number, and I called and called and called. I kept getting this same guy, same message, which was, they're still in pre-production, call back later. And I kept doing that for probably about 2 months. I'd already planned on moving in with my girlfriend in Houston, and I thought, well, they must have picked another location. So I started to pack up and everything. And at the time, I was really questioning whether pursuing a career in film was actually something real, or if it was just a fever dream of a 12-year-old who watched too many movies growing up. Not long after I moved, that's when they started building the sets. And I'm like, whoa, something's actually happening. This is coming to life. At the time, I'd been searching for jobs endlessly in Houston and not having any luck. I got really depressed. I called my career development advisor, Peter, and I asked him, what should I do? I'm not getting any bites out here. I know this isn't a permanent job, but it's something. And Ben Affleck's been one of my idols as a director for years. And he said, see if you can just go. Funny enough, at the same time, my friend Alec had actually been investigating on his own.
So hello, my name is Alec Octave Smith. I worked as an extras casting assistant, as well as just a couple background roles for the film of Live by Night. So kind of the story goes, first heard about the film, well, I guess I knew that it was going to be filmed for a while, knew about the film, but it kind of caught me off guard that it was coming to town as soon as it was. I just remember just a friend or family member, whomever, telling me about, they were going to be filming here, to be looking out for opportunities and so forth. So I have a family friend named Becky. Just kind of told her what was going on, that it was coming to our town. And I told her that what my intentions were as far as trying to get a job on there. She was ever so kind enough to send me back an address and said, I don't personally know anyone on the film, but she gave me the names of some people to talk to. The next day, maybe that same day, I drove down to the production office, and she had just told me to basically make sure I had my resume with me. Before that, I'd already submitted my resume to the electronic email link, that they do for just about everyone else. But in any case, so I went down there, had no idea what the building was. The building that they actually had the production office in, it wasn't necessarily used, had been used. It was just kind of an empty shell of a building. It took me a while to figure out the place that I saw was actually it, just a brick building. The lights were off. You look through the doors and all the lights are off. You see nothing. So I sat in my car and I was just like, I was nervous. Didn't know what to do, where to go. I was like, I don't know if this is it or not. GPS said so. Kind of the spot that I thought it may have been. I started seeing some people leave and some people come in carrying little cases of just random stuff. Some people had cords, some had their computers, some people had nothing. But I was like, this isn't something I'd seen before. Let's check this out. So, still not knowing if I'm in the right place or not, the door is propped open. It's not even shut all the way. I just kind of waltz in. No one at the front, no receptionist. None of the lights on the first floor are on. All I can see, I look down a hallway and there's a light on. I hear two people talking. I can see a man and a woman. So I walk up and Becky had texted me and told me that I needed to either speak with a Jennifer or a Mary Ellen. I walked and proceeded to tell them, basically who I was and who I was trying to talk to. They were nice. They told me that I just needed to go to the second floor and then they should be up there. So I walk backwards, of course, thank you. Walk up the stairs. Still not a very light place at all. I don't think they'd been there too long. And all I see are people working what seems to be very hard on these little plastic tables you can just kind of break down. That's what everyone was kind of working on. No one even so as much as really looked at me. I just kind of walked up and everyone was so involved in what they were doing. I don't think they thought anything of it to see someone else kind of looking lost walking around. Ended up a lady named Carly Spell. She actually approached me and I was standing there, obviously didn't know where I was going. She asked me what I was doing. I told her I was there to speak with Jennifer or Mary Ellen. Turns out she was actually Jennifer's assistant, but she wasn't there, and I wasn't going to be able to talk to her at that time. She wasn't there. Okay, all right, it's a bummer. She said she'd take my contact information down, my email, phone number, all that good stuff. I left there. I felt kind of, you feel kind of this like, I didn't get to talk to her directly. Like, was this going to make or break me? Was this going to be the decision I made to not wait around? Not that I was necessarily given one. In any case, I continued, went home, drove home, nervous, anxious, wanted my phone to ring. Jennifer ended up giving me a call back. Turned out Carla was able to talk to her and was able to see my resume and wanted basically an interview to see if I would be able to come in for the job. So I met Jennifer, who's this lovely, very, very small lady with just black hair, everything you would imagine, glasses, the scarf, all that good stuff. It didn't really end up too well, just because the actual conversation went over really well. She had my resume with her in her bag, which I was like, oh, this is a producer, she's got my stuff. She saw me. And I've been wanting to do this my whole life, but she needed an answer, or I guess she needed my commitment to be able to work on the film for really an unstated amount of time, and I had to be available the very next morning. And unfortunately, I'm tied down to the burden of going to, approval to not be at work. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes sometimes. So I told her I wasn't able to give her an answer yet. I couldn't. I just literally couldn't. I just couldn't give her an answer until that next day. I told her I could have one the next day, but she needed an answer immediately, so I understand. In any case, days went by really, and hadn't really heard much. So I guess at this point, I was feeling happy that I had an opportunity, but had already kind of come to the conclusion that maybe it just wasn't going to work. And that's about when I get a call from my good friend Matthew Colvin.
So Alec actually got in the door. He was over the moon about it, excited, and just basically kept saying, "Get your ass over here. We got to be in on this." And so That's when I called my mom. It was a very daunting task to call her and be like, hey, I want to do this crazy thing. But I had 2 solid cards in my hand, which is I talked to Peter, and Peter recommended I should try it. And Alec, who actually had his foot in the door and was willing to keep his foot in the door until I got in the door too. And so I called my mom, told her everything, and she said, come on home. I vowed to myself that regardless if I actually get on production, I was going to be there. I wanted to be there when Affleck and the crew and everybody was there. Even if I was standing behind the barricades, I didn't care. I wanted to be there. I wanted to see this happen. Because it's not every day Hollywood comes knocking at your back door, essentially. So I made the drive, 14 hours to be exact. On the way back, I listened to the audiobook. And what's normally a pretty dead drive from Houston back to Brunswick, just my imagination took off. Like, I heard all the characters, all the scenes, everything in Boston, when Joe's in prison. Just I was immersed into this world, and my imagination was just flying all over the place as to like, what could this possibly look like? And obviously Affleck's resume speaks for itself, and it's one of those things where I kept thinking of what he could possibly do with it. Little did I know, it was even bigger and even better than I could have possibly imagined. So I get back, and the first thing I do is call Alec, and he says, after I get off work, we're going down there. And so we hop in his car, he takes me down there, he's going to show me where the production office is. We looked around the set for a minute, but then his whole thing was he wanted to get me in the production office. And I remember very specifically, he said, take your resume in there, look confident, look ready to be there, look like you're supposed to be there, and say, hi, I need to speak to Jennifer, please. So I walk in, I talk to this very nice guy at the front desk, and he said, well, unfortunately, Jennifer's already gone home for the day. And he said, come back tomorrow. He said, say you have an appointment. Now, I didn't have an appointment. Not at all. But I managed to conjure that just from talking with this guy. Afterwards, Alec and I went and we walked around the set, and it was just, I will never forget it, because there were a number of times working on this movie where I felt like my life changed or some big thing hit me. My eyes were open, where everything was real in a whole new way. And the first moment of that was when we went and walked on the set. We took a step back in time, literally. We got out of the car and we were in 1920s Ybor. There were painted signs on every wall. There were awnings. There were the street was dirt covered. It was literally something out of a movie. I just remember Alec and I just walking around and just being mesmerized by everything that we saw, and just seeing how grand of a scale this was, and just that, everything we're seeing, Warner Brothers signed the check for. So I go back the second day. I don't have Alec there to kick me in the door. So I go in, I stand as confidently and act as confidently as I can, and I said, hi, I'm here to see Jennifer. I have an appointment. I could never be an actor, but that was the one moment I felt like an actor. Where it's like, I gave my Oscar-winning performance there. Yeah, it was a different receptionist that day. About 5 minutes passed and she came back, and she said, well, Jennifer doesn't remember having an appointment with you, but she said she'd step out and say hi. And I'm thinking in my head, well, that's all I need. I'm sitting there holding my resume in this little plastic little folder thing. I was literally applying for the job I always wanted. So Jennifer comes down. She's this little 5'2", sweet, just happy, kind-looking woman with glasses, and she just says, "Hi, you're Matt, right?" I was like, "Yes, ma'am, that's me." And we talked for a minute, and I just told her how I drove 1,000 miles from Texas to be a part of this. And I will do anything. I will do it for free. I will do anything that gets me on that set. I will stand and watch. I will hold something for somebody. I will get coffee. I don't care. Just let me be on this. Unfortunately, she said to me, "We're all filled up. If you would have been here a week ago, I would have had something for you." And I feel like I'm dying inside, because I'm like, no, I missed it by a week. But then she smiled, and she said, "I'm going to hang on to your resume. Now, give me your phone number. I gave her my number. She gave me hers. And she said, keep your phone on for the next week. I'm like, okay. Because a lot of times we'll be there either the day of or the day before, and we need somebody desperately. You're going to be on my call list. I'm like, great. I'm literally in the best possible position I could be in given the circumstances. It's by no means a guarantee for anything, but the ball's rolling. About a week later, I get a call from this wonderful woman I would come to know whose name was Mary Ellen. She said, Jennifer recommended you and said you seemed responsible and you seemed like you knew a thing or two about how production works. And she said, can you work this day, this day, this day? And I said, you have no idea how long I've been waiting for this phone call. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Absolutely. And she said, now wait 1 second. Before you commit to this, I know it's exciting, I know this is a big thing, but do me a favor, call me back in like 30 minutes, double check everything, make sure you're free those days, because I need you from dusk till dawn. Before we hung up, she asked me if I knew anybody else. And I said, well, funny enough, my friend Alec has applied to be an extra in the movie. He's the one who helped me get my foot in the door with the whole thing. And she said, oh yeah, Jennifer did mention him. She said, get a hold of him, see if he can do it these days too. I said, absolutely, I'll call you back.
I was at work actually when I received the phone call, and so typically whenever Matt calls, it's normally something that's some good news, big news. So of course I had to answer. So I walked to the back where he basically tells me that he was contacted by Mary Ellen, wanted him to work on the film, but also wanted to see if he knew of anyone else that could come and help as well. She had apparently, I guess, briefly remembered me from Jennifer, but Matt called me, told me all about it, and I said yes before I even talked to my bosses. Basically, I told Matt, go ahead and tell them yes, I'll call out if I have to, if I have to call it sick, whatever I have to do, so you tell her yes, without a doubt, I'm going. So I told my manager, and he was fine with it. He actually used to had an opportunity to play on Broadway piano, so he absolutely understood kind of the scope of everything. But long story short, I was able to go.
So I double checked with Alec. He got the time off. He got the okay from work. I called Mary Ellen and told her we'll be there. She said, awesome. I'll see you tomorrow in Savannah. I will email you your call time and the address tonight.
The next day was actually the very first day that we had to start filming.
I couldn't sleep that night because I was so excited. It was like a kid going to Disney World.
I think I managed to fall asleep for an hour or two. Wasn't much.
I can't remember our exact call time, but it was very early.
Matt came to my house around 3 in the morning, if not earlier.
We got there, it was this empty parking lot, and there was nobody there. It was in the middle of I think it was a SCAD parking lot or something. We were definitely way early, but better be safe than sorry. I'll never forget all these horrible scenarios we thought of to where we accidentally went to the wrong address, or if Mary Ellen had sent us the wrong address. And then this bus pulls up, and the bus driver gets out.
I guess we looked lost. We were just sitting in a car, all alone, Matt's car. He comes up and asked if we're on the film, and we said, yes, we are. And so he was basically, yeah, this is exactly where you needed to be. I'm actually your ride to the set, so it was great.
We get out of the car, we get our stuff, and we get on the bus, and we actually, right when we got there, a few of the makeup people had gotten there too, and so they get on the bus, and it's dark, it wasn't cold, but it was kind of like a sticky, kind of cool. And I will never forget just this inside sound, the mechanical air-conditioned sounds of that bus.
There were quite a bit of people on that first shuttle with us that morning, and then when we first got there, which wasn't a very long bus ride at all, it wasn't, but the feeling of getting onto that set. It
smells like diesel and car exhaust everywhere, and it sounds like we're at a construction site.
At this point, it's still so early. The sun's not up. There's a little bit, the balloon lights are slowly but surely beginning to be erected, and they're turning them on with generators.
And they were putting up the tent for all the extras, for all the makeup and hair and stuff.
There's just a lot going on that's very fluid. There's just movement everywhere. From other crew members walking around, putting things together, to just people doing their thing, setting up, getting ready for the day.
And so Alec and I get there, and we're just like... You know, it's like we just walked into Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. That's when we made our first friends, Pez and Adam. They had been PAs on countless other productions. I remember Pez one of the days had an Iron Man 3 t-shirt on, like a crew shirt. Adam and Pez were great because they just took us under their wing and they just took us through the motions and said, don't stress about anything, it's all okay, everybody's nice, we're all here together, this is a journey. Finally, Mary Ellen shows up.
Fantastic woman, very, very nice.
And she, very, very pleasant, very, hey, how are you doing? You ready to work? Yes, we are.
The very first task that we had to do was to make sure that we helped Adam and Pez get these foldable metal chairs.
We set up everything for the extras, and then the extras start coming.
We have to begin collecting all the extra cell phones as they come in by busload, by busload, by busload.
And they had their hairs in curlers and everything, and it was just this, it went from just like this one area that was just like a handful of people just became this just like, not work zone, it just became this like field of activity.
All we really knew that we had to do at that point, we had all these fresh envelopes, wrote their names on it, etc. They arrive, we get their phones, put them away, and then they line up to get their hair and makeup done.
I actually recognized some of the extras, I knew them personally.
Once all that is finished, we, Matt and I and Mary Ellen, take our little clear cases and waltz our way over to base camp.
We saw an opening, it was in this building, I forgot what it was, but they turned this building into basically an old cigar factory. And I will never forget, I just saw, his back was turned to us, but I knew it was Ben, because he was the biggest person I saw. He was tall, he was in this blue shirt, he was just sitting there, he had his back to me, but he was sitting like this. What I found out later is he comes up with a lot of the shots the day of. And that's exactly what he was doing when we got there. I saw Robert Richardson, the cinematographer, who we talked about countless times in school. And I was just sitting there carrying these phones and just being like, oh my god, what's happening? And then it kind of went on pause for a little bit.
The very first base camp was this old historic little warehouse looking area in Savannah. I'm not familiar with the name of the building, but in any case, it was essentially a giant, empty, cold stone room with about 4 windows.
It was bittersweet because we were there, but it was bitter because we couldn't see anything. There was this window where we could kind of see into the other building, but not very well. I just remember me and Alec very clearly saw the silhouettes of these two like gangsters or something. We didn't know if it was Affleck or we didn't know if it was Chris Messina or who it was, but we just saw these silhouettes and a lot of smoke.
And that's about it. I mean, you can't see much. There's not much light in there. I don't know that the place had like a literal power system. It's just kind of a building. We began our jobs by immediately having to attend all of our focus and energy to making sure that none of these several hundred background actors were compromising their contracts by means of taking pictures.
The problem was everybody wanted to use their freaking phones the second they got rid of them.
They weren't allowed to give anything away from the film. Not all of them agreed, but with some hard work, Matt and I made sure that nothing was able to happen. We kind of kept Miss Mary Ellen's dream come true there. The day goes on, and this specific shooting day, they were in a cigar rolling factory, so that actually required about every extra that was there that morning. They spent the majority of their time inside of this warehouse, or inside of the actual cigar rolling factory, while Matt and I remained in the actual warehouse base camp holding area that we were.
I'm Jackie Santoro, and I was a Cuban cigar roller on Live by Night. Yeah, I've been on a lot of sets, and they're all different. What I did like about this scene that I was in, it felt very authentic. It was natural, in its natural state. I don't know what I would have expected a Cuban cigar factory to look like, but that was it. I don't think the cigar rollers are loving their job. You know, it's not a cushy job. So sitting on that hard dang bench the whole time, that was the hardest thing. My butt hurt, my shoulders hurt, my back hurt. Being uncomfortable, I think, would be part of it. So that was good in that sense. I'm used to the long days. I knew what to expect. But yeah, it was really good. That was over with.
that's when we met the cigar guy.
We met this fantastic gentleman who I could not remember his name, but he actually owned a cigar company out in Ybor, modern day, and was gracious enough to basically supply the cigars for a lot of the movie. I don't know if all of it, but at least while they were here, they did.
He was there to show the extras how to roll cigars. He was also there just to advise on things and just to kind of help paint the atmosphere of the whole place.
Thank goodness for him, because he was able to tell us a lot of things that we hadn't really known that they were going to be doing that day. We didn't necessarily know what the game plan for the day looked like.
He also gave us tobacco leaves, which I still have mine to this day, and he just told us all about how delicate and how precise it is to roll a cigar, and but you have to be natural with it. It's an art form in its own.
He was actually one of the first people where we were told about a possible shooting scene, and he may end up actually be getting shot by Ben himself. So we were constantly waiting throughout the day for him to get called so we could just kind of listen out. You know, if we couldn't see, we were going to make sure we could hear that gunshot in all of its glory.
It wasn't long after that we met Sarah, who became our guardian angel on set. Well, one of our guardian angels. She was very nice. She came up, introduced herself, told us about how everything was going and how the set worked, and she worked on Batman vs. Superman as well. And she told us about working on that and how the dynamic with Ben was different. She said he was never an unpleasant person. He just was very, very focused on the set. She said, don't bug him, but don't be afraid of him either.
After talking with Sarah and kind of going over all that information with her, she was gracious enough to try and figure out a time when we'd actually be able to go onto the set.
She's like, I'll get you guys in there, I promise. Before the end of the day, I will. And so Alec and I are sitting there, we're patiently waiting. Lunch happens. I actually ran into my friend Ryan Blount, who I went to Full Sail with. We hadn't seen each other since graduation. Who would have thought the first time we've seen each other since graduation was on an actual movie set?
My name is Ryan Christopher Blount, and I worked on the movie Lit by Night as a locations production assistant. I was on the project for about 3.5 months. It was an endurance test, long hours. Me being in locations, that meant 14 hours, sometimes 18. This is actually not my first time being a part of a film, but the films I've done before, they were small budget, small crew, small everything. So the schedule would be like for a weekend, Saturday and Sunday, or at most like a week. And so compared to that to a feature film, this was my first feature film, I wasn't quite ready for that, and nobody really was there to tell me, because they all kind of assumed, because I put on my resume that I worked on the film before, but I didn't say short, and and I guess they just kind of like thought, okay, film, you've done it before, you should know how it's worked, and it took me on a roller coaster. There were times when locations was pretty slow, and typically during the day of locations, I would spend time not only making sure the set was okay, make sure people were staying behind the barriers, but there were times where I would have to pick up trash, and if there was nothing else to do, then my boss would literally look at me and just say, hey Ryan, we're slow today, why don't you go over to the set and just watch them do what they do. The first time she did that was when Ben was filming a scene with Zoe, and it was on the beach. It's actually in the trailer. When I think Zoe's in front of Ben and he's like walking behind her, and I was standing on the side. I was just sitting there just like watching because I had nothing to do. The second time was when we was over at this place called the Ritz Hotel in the script, and it was a shootout, and literally we had nothing to do, and me and my friend, we just went over there, we just sat there and just watched them film the shootout. And it was interesting because Ben was in that scene and he was also directing it. So that was my first time actually seeing an actor and a director wearing both hats, and how he would switch off after you call cut and he'll go back to Video Village and watch the previous take. I was kind of awe-inspired. Being that I want to be a filmmaker myself, I was like, this right here I'm never going to forget. And I still just like get chills when I think about it.
After that, it kind of just got slow again. Me and Alec were just sitting there, that bitterness getting in a little bit. We wanted to just see it so bad, we were hungry for it. While we were waiting, we met this guy named Patrick, who was great. He had been a PA on a bunch of things. He was new to Georgia, but he was very well versed on how to do PA work, and his job was to keep this freaking set of doors closed. And let me tell you, this building, whatever it was, it had these two beautiful wooden doors that looked ancient. But the problem was they loved to swing open. And that man did some Mission Impossible stuff to keep that door closed while they were rolling. I remember he slid right under the window one time to pull the door closed before it was going to blow open. Not long after that, Sarah pokes her head out of the doors.
And she kind of sees us standing outside, just patiently waiting, and she just signals for us to come on over.
So Alec and I, very quietly and very carefully, walk inside.
Holy cow.
We walk inside and it's dreamlike. There are these shafts of light coming in through the windows. There's people everywhere.
The first thing that I noticed was the smell of that cigar rolling factory. I don't much myself smoke cigars often, but that smell was amazing, and it just greets you.
We were positioned right behind where the monitor was, or one of the monitors. There was 2 monitors.
It's just kind of been in the middle of critiquing a shot.
Ben was running through it with the actor. They had this guy on this platform. Back in the day, factory workers were actually the most well-versed on current events or whatnot, because there was a guy who would actually be in the factory whose job it was to read the newspaper to the workers, just to break up the ambience or whatever. And Ben's doing this really cool shot where it starts out on the guy's face and it pans down to his foot. And his foot was just still for the longest time. Ben paused, turned to Robert Richardson, said something. Obviously, we didn't hear that part. Then Richardson kind of backs away and goes, like that, that's it. Ben goes through the shot again, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said to the guy, twitch your foot a little. And the guy kind of started doing it, and he was kind of doing it like too jerky, like it was almost too intentional. And then he stopped him, and he basically said, look, these guys are coming in here, they're dangerous guys, you don't know what they're going to do, but you can't be afraid. You can't show that you're afraid, at least in a way that the other workers are going to see, because then you'll cause a panic. And he said, that's your only way you can show your fear, or something along those lines. He did the shot again, except the guy's foot was very nervously shaking. It reminded me of Tom Hanks' hand in Saving Private Ryan. They did the shot, and him and Robert Richardson went through the shot again, and then they moved on. That was it. I remember there was a big loud bell that you heard, and then Ben went back to his director's chair. He's in costume, might I add, because he's in the movie. He's sitting there, his assistant comes up, who actually I think turns out to be one of the producers too. She comes up to him with his phone. He's just doing something on his phone, and then Sarah has this move around, like I think twice.
Ben ended up to the point where after a while he was about 6 feet or so away from Matt and I, and it's just one of those moments where it's like, I just want to turn around. I know he's there. I hear him. I feel his presence, but I don't want to turn around and look at him because I don't want to make him mad or anything. But
a few minutes after that's when we saw our first shot where Ben was actually acting in the shot as well as directing it. And I've never seen someone so comfortable in their environment in my life.
Just being able to I guess, work together with someone like that and watch him is inspirational, to say the least.
Someone who has that much responsibility. He wrote it, he's producing it, he's directing it, and he's acting in it. That's a lot of balls to juggle. And the fact that he did it and was so calm and just so collected and just so... He was focused, but I never heard him raise his voice or anything like that. He was always very calm and he was very pleasant to people. And it was just neat seeing him go from looking at the shot, analyzing it, to he's Joe Coughlin. And he's in it. You can, the look in his eyes, you could just see it. Watching Ben direct was like a masterclass. It was subtlety. It was trusting your shots. Your cinematographer is your best friend. They were inseparable. And they were laughing. They were friends. You could clearly tell they were friends. They weren't just colleagues. They were friends. That moment changed my life, because all the insecurities I had about film being the right profession for me or what have you, all those went away because I saw an artist in his element and how naturally he behaved and functioned in that element. I wanted to be like that someday. Not like a movie star or anything like that, but just, it solidified a few things for me. One, this is what I need to do. This is what my life's calling is. Two, I don't want to be a movie star or anything like that, but I want to be in an environment like that and be that comfortable and that confident in what I'm doing. And 3, I'm more than willing to work my ass off to get there.
It was a really good wake-up call to see that that's exactly why I was there, is because I was doing what I've always wanted to do and will still continue to do.
I learned so much from that first day alone, and I was still in for 3 more days of work.
In any case, finished up that day and wrapped up, and finally went back home for the night after a long day, and I had about 4 or 5 more days afterwards for that matter.
The next day was our first day back in Brunswick, and there were a lot more extras, there were a lot more crew members, there's a lot going on.
My name is Daniel Nichols.
My name is Jeremiah Stevenson.
I'm Jessica Spearman. I'm Melissa Spearman.
Tim Hunsucker.
William John Haran.
I'm Samuel Arbo. I worked on the movie for 2.5 weeks, and I was assistant to the production office.
I was extra on Live by Night.
I was on the set of Live by Night.
I was a driver on the movie on the set for about 7 days in Brunswick.
And I was on Live by Night for 4 days.
And I worked on the project Live by Night for 3 days in a row. As soon as we walked on the set, it was like, holy cow, what did I just get myself into?
It was really much larger than I realized.
You know, I never realized what all went into the movie. You know what I mean? There were so many people around. It was like ants just moving everywhere.
The first time I walked on the set was actually when it was being built. The skeleton of the sets were still being brought up, and there were some things that weren't put together yet. And me being in locations, that was pretty much my job to manage that location, make sure nobody got close to the set, particularly pedestrians, regular citizens. And so when I first walked on there, it didn't really look like much, because honestly it looked like one of the sets that we used to build in college. But I think it was cool just for the fact that this empty lot in Brunswick, and seeing it transformed into the 1920s out of the blue just because, and I was like, this is slightly more interesting than the college sets.
It was really cool. Like, I got to work on the X-Men movie a while back, and first time walking onto the set, I could tell like this was a much bigger deal, and a lot more money was spent into this.
From the minute they rolled camera, it was like you were literally looking in on a moment back in the 1920s.
Being able to see that set even before the shooting began, I can remember walking on that road with Matt before everything kind of started and before we had a concrete yes or no, we're going to work on it. It was more or less just a childish dream at that point, but it was so close. It was tangible. For the first time, it wasn't a dream. We could literally touch the set.
Yeah, they made downtown Brunswick look better, and I wish they left that stuff up.
Some of the emotions that basically came rushing over me was after we got fitted for the costumes, and the costumes itself were just a timepiece of their own. Like just seeing everybody dressed up like that and having to act a certain way really, honestly, it took me out of myself and I just felt like a whole different person, and it was, that's acting.
I've always wanted to do stuff like this, so there was no question, since it was in our hometown, that I was not going to, audition and go out and try to get it.
When we were up in Ben Affleck's property up in Riceboro, I believe it's called Hampton Island, I had a helicopter scene up there, shot by a helicopter, and I'm chasing Ben Affleck in a 1919 Lincoln Continental. It's called the Hero's Car. It's yellow and green. You'll see it in the movie. And I'm in a 1928 black and purple Auburn. The combined total of the cars was like $1.5 million, okay?
Having brought, the people that were working on the set have been bringing these cars from all over the U.S.
The cars were really cool. They're period accurate, and it was a miracle that they still looked and functioned as well as they did.
A lot of them, they had a lot of issues breaking down, so there's mechanics on the spot, going in, fixing parts in the car, which, man, working on an old car like that, you have to have some skill and, some history of how to work on something like that. The extras were amazing. I have had, like I said, I've worked with a couple of them, actually like a handful of them before, and so definitely felt really familiar with those people. There was a couple of high-strung people, but that goes with any major production like that, I think.
I met this one gentleman who was actually in, he was in a specific episode of Family Guy, and he and I were talking about audio software because I was looking at doing a podcast and things like that at the time.
When we went to do the makeup and whatnot the first day, we actually made a few good friends, and that kind of made you want to stick around.
First day we kind of all got to know each other. We spent a lot of time in holding. Some people we already knew that were from St. Simon. We had a lot of fun people and fun personalities. And then also Jolly Jeffrey Little. He became a good friend of mine. He was the double for Chris Messina and then recently passed away, unfortunately. But he was a good friend, and we messaged each other in excitement about the film coming out on the big screen. These are the messages from Jolly Jeffrey Little. I remember your face from Ybor Street shootings. All you ladies were boasting the same here in Bonstow. Did you enjoy? I was Dion too, Chris Messina's body double. We filmed over 10 days in several locations, several up on Hampton Island where Ben lives. He said Chris gave me his email and asked me to send all my contact information, so I'm hoping he gives me more work. And I'll have connections through it in Atlanta, so I'm excited. And then he said, wow, so amazing. Ben's a class act. They are in Boston today, and all the producers, directors, and crews, especially Chris, wanted me to continue on with them as Dion too, but they had already cast my part before they met me. Imagine how many guys look like an Italian mobster in Boston and are aspiring actors. Winky face. My hope is the Dion 2 up there screws up a lot and they'll need me. And then my last message to him was, R.I.P. my friend, you will be missed.
Being an extras casting assistant for this film was definitely interesting. It was a brutal job. It wasn't the easiest job I've ever done, more or less the most difficult job I've ever done.
It was also very overwhelming. And that's when our second guardian angel came to us.
At least it would have been more so had it not been for Mr. Bobby Vokes. He ended up tagging along the day after Matt and I filmed in Savannah, and turns out Sarah Anderson, who is his significant other, she was working on the film, and therefore Bobby was in the area. Ended up, Mary Ellen asked Sarah if Bobby wouldn't mind helping. So
now for Bobby, this wasn't his first rodeo. He had been on the set before. He worked on Batman vs. Superman, and he helped us keep our cool and press on even through some of the hardest moments. I remember there was one moment where my phone died because it was trying to find a signal and couldn't, and it used all the battery doing that. And Mary Ellen comes into the extras holding on set, which was the art gallery down Newcastle Street, and she chewed me out. And Bobby comes up to me right after Mary Ellen leaves and says, don't sweat it. She's doing that to teach you. She's not mad at you. I've seen her angry. You don't want to see her angry. That wasn't even on the spectrum of remote frustration. It made me think of the day before when we were talking to Pez and Adam. We asked them about Mary Ellen. And they said, we call her Mom. And you'll see why. And that's why. She threw us in the trenches, but she took care of us. And I owe a lot to that woman. And I owe a lot to Bobby. Because Bobby kept me sane. Because I stress out about a lot of things, and Bobby kept me calm.
He ended up tagging along and being kind of the third musketeer with Matt and I. This was just a regular, I have to get called into work on my day off sort of thing, is what it was for him. But the amount of things that he was able to teach, just the nicest guy, went out of his way. There were times when Matt and I were so busy, I mean, we wouldn't even get a chance to eat a lot of the times. Bobby would be kind of the guy who would be experienced and be like, you know what, you guys need to go and get yourself some food. Let me take over, you know, I'll sit here and just man it and I'll hold it down by myself. Y'all go take care of yourselves, do what you need to do. He was always and constantly looking out for Matt and I. The end of Prohibition scene was nearly the end of the entire experience for Matt and myself. At this point, Matt and I had to kind of experience the end of it separately, because we were doing two different jobs. I actually was able to finally become an extra.
Everybody was celebrating. All the extras are running around with cigars and sparklers and liquor and everything.
Words can't explain it. You've got this street. There's a street where you've grown up. Your high school is 2 blocks down the road the other way. And to be able to do that and be a part of it and still be in your hometown, it was just like a big leap in the right direction.
That's when the fireworks happened. And the spectacle came to life.
My name is Mike Aubin. I own Pyro Mike's Fireworks, and I did some of the pyrotechnics for the movie. What happened was, we dropped my wife off after eating dinner. My daughter had just got off. No, it was her first night off since they'd been filming, which was, only 3 nights. And she wanted to go down there and see it. So we're on our way down there around 7:30 at night. And right before we get to where you can see everything being done, I get a phone call. It says, this is Maria from the movie downtown filming Live by Night. And so I pulled over before she even got anything out, because why else do you call Pyro Mike, at 7:30 at night? And she said, is this Pyro Mike? I said, yeah, this is Pyro Mike. And she says, we need fireworks for this movie. It's like, okay, what do you need? So I did a U-turn. I knew I was going to have to come way out here. And she started telling me what I needed. So we picked up my wife at the house, and we came here to the store, and I called her again, and we just started piling stuff in the car that she was saying. We go down there, and they actually have us come and park on set. So the FX people get with me, and we start talking. It turns out all they're going to need is fountains, because they have the stuff that's going up. Fountains, basically, it's just sparks coming up out of a tube. But they need me to go, show, I don't know what the guy's name was, the guy in charge of the camera, Robert. And so I'm sitting there, and he's talking to probably Ben or somebody. The light was so bright I couldn't tell who was back there behind him. And we're waiting to show him, because I'd already showed the FX people what I had. He finally looks at us and he says, I ain't got time for this, just go set it up over there. So I grabbed the fireworks for him, the fountains. I said, all right, here you go. And they said, no, we need you to stay on set and do them. So, they had me go over beside the cars and set up on either side of it. And they had me stay there and light them and hide behind the car while they were shooting that scene. So that was pretty much my extent, that and staying out of the way.
The feeling, I wish I knew enough words to explain it. At that point, I thought it was the end.
I remember leaving after that fireworks scene and just feeling so blessed to work on a project like that.
Everyone is just celebrating and happy, and anytime I think about it, I just see people smiling and dancing around and celebrating this point in the movie. But to me, it was almost like I'm celebrating this part in the movie. Absolutely, I'm doing my thing, but I was just happy to get all this energy out on set. I used all the energy of all these years where I've just tried so hard to get there, and it's happening. And you just have fireworks, and it's your town, and it doesn't look like your town, but it is.
And they brought this crane in that was like huge, and they had lights just like in downtown Brunswick, and they were bright, and it was great.
My mother herself was actually able to be an extra in Live by Night also. Having this be my very first film that I've ever worked on, but also being able to have your mother kind of be there with you, that is quite an amazing feeling. I don't really know how else to put it. For this in particular moment that I'm referencing to, I was able to be an Ybor pedestrian at this point. I didn't know where my mother was. I was working as crew for most of the day, and then I did extra work, background work for, I guess, a little less than the second half of the day. So I've already been fitted and had my costume on, and I'm downtown, and we're setting up ready to go. They've got these beautiful fireworks. Ben and Chris Messina, their car is actually on top of another car. They're not actually driving it, but another car's pulling it for the shot. The fireworks go off. There's a gentleman who is handing out prop cigars, all, of course, period accurate, and cigarettes and this fake liquor, which was water with caramel food coloring for most of it. And so I'm walking around with my sparklers and everything, and we're shooting the shots, and then I stumble across my mother right there at the end. And to be able to see my mom look, I guess, like my grandmother would have when my grandmother was 20 years old, it's awesome to see her in her makeup and that smile. I could tell she was happy and proud and what was going on, and the feeling was mutual right back. It's just, I'd have never in my life thought I'd have done as much as been in a play with anything other than a family member, such as a sister, never a mom or dad. So it was awesome.
I leaned over to Mary Ellen and I just said thank you. And she patted me on the back and she said, "You're welcome, sweetheart." It was amazing because this crazy dream I've had since I was 12 was real. It was happening. It was in front of me. I was a part of it. I saw it. But I had to say goodbye.
exciting enough after that, while I'm in the middle of doing my extras scene, background acting for the end of Prohibition scene, I noticed Mary Ellen's walking around in between cuts, and she just approaches me and asks me, hey, would I be available to continue work? The very next day, they're filming out in Riceboro, Georgia, and they needed about 5 to 6 guys to go and film on the Hampton Islands, where Ben does have some property. Absolutely. Absolutely. You could ask me every day, and yes, the answer's going to be yes. But continue on the next day. So we had to go to Riceboro, Georgia. There was a shuttle that took us, and we made our way. The ride itself wasn't too terribly long, maybe an hour and a half. We get there. It looks like we're about to go camping, almost, whenever we pull up to this place. Of course, it's very private. Lady has to let you on. When we finally get into, I guess it would be referred to as the neighborhood, that road was so bumpy, it felt like we were driving on nothing but holes and just a little, I don't know. It was crazy. I didn't think that little shuttle was going to make it. Anyways, we got there, and it was beautiful, first of all. You can see the pier from where the first shots of the film were done initially.
Most of our filming was done on Hampton Island, which is a private island up by Riceboro, Georgia, and so our part was kind of away from the public eye. My name is Cap Fendig, and I'm from St. Simon's Island, and Warner Brothers hired me to be their waterfront coordinator. There were 3 major segments of the marine shot. One was, of course, mainly Affleck in a historic old Chris Craft boat. We had to have 4 or 5 boats where you could load up camera crews. You had to have backup cameras. If the camera gets out there and something doesn't work. You have helicopters involved, and safety crew, divers, first aid, medic type people available. You don't think about those things till something happens, but when you got a 4-knot current that'll quickly sweep you away or underneath. Antique boats are hard to find. People that would, use them, let them be used in a film, and then they're hard to steer. They're not like modern boats. They're real easy, so you got to have really skilled pilots on board. So a lot of that filming going down a twisting river where you saw, people don't realize we're running 20 knots, 2 boats with a boom camera, both loaded with people, and the camera was swinging within 12 inches of Affleck's face, if you remember that quick shot. But it took a month and a half and a week of shooting to get that. My happiest moment was when we shot the morning film with Affleck in the boat, and the camera boat, and the helicopter, and everybody came back safe, and the director and the major photographer, head photographer, was thrilled with the shots. That's a good deal.
Those gnats are horrible. Okay, I know that we are in Georgia and they are already bad out here, but holy cow.
There were mosquitoes in Georgia. That's the only thing that was like a little bit of a canker sore.
Sure.
Because like if you're in the middle of shooting a scene and you just want to scratch, you're sort of like, I'm wearing a dress. How did it get there?
In any case, we get dressed and everything, and we actually had to walk a good ways. After the costume people gave us our costumes, we had to walk to a little guest house, which was a little decent trek. Funny story, the first time I actually got my costume, I told the guy who was picking out my stuff what he was giving me wasn't gonna fit me. I said, this looks too big. He was like, it's supposed to be big and baggy on you. You're just, you're a construction worker today. And I was like, okay. I just took his word for it, and I said, okay. I got to the actual guest house and put on my pants. I got pants and just a button-down shirt. And so, I'm a smaller guy. I'm not very big, but these pants, you could fit about 2.5 of me in the waistline on these pants they give me. And so I didn't change back into my regular civilian clothes that I wore there. I don't know why I didn't, but instead I just was grabbing the waist of my pants basically the entire way back, and I just told the guy, I was like, I don't think that these are gonna fit me. And so he just kind of laughed, got changed up, and then we made our way to the Ritz hotel. It actually did look a little different in person than it did from the actual film, but we made it there. There wasn't many of us, about 5. And this day didn't take long. It was probably the shortest day that I'd ever been on set. After we had gotten there, we probably filmed for 2 hours. Yeah, it was very quick. Still no sign of Ben at that point. I walk into the Ritz Hotel, and they actually had me as a construction worker that was on the 3rd or 4th floor of this soon-to-be Ritz Hotel building. And so I walk all the way upstairs, about 3 or 4 flights of stairs, and sit on the top, where I had to kind of get ready. I guess I had to put my tools away or then put them back. When they first started the scene, all the other guys, every single other construction worker was at the bottom, so they were all there. The scene was for us all to pack up, basically, like we're packing up and we're done for the day, so we pack up and left. They wanted me to pack up my box of tools and also be able to leave with the other guys at the exact same time that all the other guys were leaving. Physically, it's just not possible. The gloves they gave me were like mittens, like leather mittens. I had no finger use at all, and this little toolbox was so hard to open. Eventually, Adam was just like, hey man, it's kind of not, that's probably not going to be the best route to go. He's like, instead of walking all the way down each time, he just instructed me to do something else, but I just thought I got a kick out of that, because I'm wearing like these 50-pound stainless steel boots and all this, all this heavy stuff. It ended up paying off in the end. By that I mean, after everyone else had left, everyone had to walk back to the shuttle. Obviously, I'm the last one to leave because it takes time to walk down that many flights of stairs. And I see Ben and Robert Richardson were walking towards the Ritz as I'm leaving the Ritz. My heart's already thumping because I'm like, holy cow, I'm about to cross it. What do I do? The other crew people that were obviously seniors to us would basically tell you, you're going to be excited. That's normal. Just, I don't know, the way that it's talked about, you almost don't want to look at them the wrong way. And so I didn't really know what to do. Any case, long story short, we crossed paths. I'm keeping my head down. I didn't want to really say anything. I just wanted to let the man have his space. He was doing a much bigger job than I was. I needed him to focus. I wasn't going to say anything, but he approached me himself. We were just walking past each other, and he just kind of looks at me and he says, hey, how's it going? And, I say, I'm good. And he says, hey, what's your name? My name's Alec. And he was like, okay, Alec, nice to meet you. He said, are you enjoying yourself, or how are you liking it? And I told him that that had been my 4th or 5th day on the set. I couldn't be happier, more excited and pleased, and just thanked him for it. He replied by saying just how thankful he was for everyone and how awesome of a job that all of the extras and everyone has and had been doing up to that point. I was happy that the stairs paid off at that point to speak to the guy, but seeing someone like that in person, you really don't know what to do. They look a little different in person. Ben looks a little different.
Ben is seriously one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen. Like, not fat or anything like that. He's just a giant man.
Bro was stacked.
Because he was still buff from Batman, so he was built like a tank.
It's super cool because you're like, oh, this is before Batman v Superman had come out. I saw him earlier in the day, and he was in like gym clothes, and like from there you were kind of like, oh, the dude's kind of built and everything, but he was like super far off. And then like when he walks by, he's just like in his like full like gangster suit, and he has his hat on. He's just like, and you're like, go get him, Batman. That's great.
And there was one scene or one day that I think it was the same day that it was very hot. That he actually was a superhero. A lady got very hot and almost fainted, and she actually fell on the sidewalk downtown Brunswick in front of one of the storefronts, and he was the first one. The people who were around her obviously were like rushed to her side, but he ran over with a bottle of water and helped her up and stood patting her back and just made sure that she was okay. So it was neat to see him, even though there was a whole crew of people who could have aided her. He personally ran over and helped assist. So.
I remember when we finally picked up and went back to set, we were sitting there, we were processing all the extras out, giving them their phones back, doing their paperwork, yada, yada, yada. And I remember seeing Ben walking back to his trailer, I guess, with his dog. I saw his assistant had taken the dog over to him earlier. But what I remember most about that is every crew member he passed, he was saying, thank you guys, great job today. He was giving them reassurance. He was saying thank you. And that For me, that's a huge thing. Here's a guy who is an A-lister of A-listers.
He was no nonsense.
He can direct anything he wants, he can star in anything he wants. But he's still a real guy. He appreciates everybody who's on that set and all the hard work they're doing to help him make his vision come to life.
Everything just kind of lined up in the end, and everything paid off well.
I met so many people on that set. It's not even just extras, like I met other crew members, I met camera crew, lighting, grip, electric, I met builders.
Since this film, I've actually applied for quite a few more acting opportunities. I've also, I don't know, kind of it's really brought me into that period. So I actually started writing music a little bit in that time period, which I never would have thought, but it really resonated with me being in that time.
It took me on a roller coaster. Every day was something new, and but ultimately it was a good experience compared to what I've done before. So
being able to see the community come together as it did, I've never seen so many people get along that never knew each other and build such great relationships.
I feel like the movie did bring the town together, because all anybody was talking about, even after the movie left, was they did a movie here and how much it changed downtown, and I can't believe that our town is actually going to be featured in a movie.
Everyone enjoyed themselves being there, so that was really a surprise. They had work to do, and sometimes it was kind of hectic and intense, but they still allowed themselves to just be like, oh, it's going to get done.
Being able to see the effect of what one thing can do to an entire giant group of several hundred people blows my mind. I love seeing everyone come together, because that's when we're all going to be at our best. We were all together, had our jobs that we were doing, and just genuinely, we went back to the 1920s. We had no cell phones. We had nothing except for each other.
This is just an amazing experience, and I couldn't think of a better way to end it.
Everyone that I met was very nice. I've met a lot of people and made a lot of memories, and just that I'll never forget. I guess all I can really say now is just thank you. Thank you guys very, very much for everything.
1, 2, 1, 2. I'm a sitting on top of the world. I'm a rolling along, rolling along. I'm quitting the blues of the world, just singing a song, just singing a song. Glory, hallelujah, just from the parson. Hey, Pa, you ready to call? Just like Humpty Dumpty, I'm fixing to fall. I'm sitting on top of the world, just rolling along, just rolling along. Don't want any millions, I'm getting my share. I've only got one suit, just one. That's all I can wear. That bundle of money won't make you feel gay. That sweet little honey, oh, she's making me say, I'm sitting on top of the world, just rolling along, just rolling along. I'm quitting the blues of the world, just singing this song, just singing this song. Glory, hallelujah, just told the person, hey, Pa, you ready to call? Just like Humpty Dumpty, I'm gonna fall, yeah, I'm sitting on top of the world, I'm just rolling along, just rolling along on top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world.